welcome to the DGD podcast. As always, Juan Daniels, the NCDGD himself, Robert Reynolds, and today we're talking Mississippi State, and no one better to talk Mississippi State than our guy Jake Wimberly over here. Jake, welcome to the show, sir.
Guys, I appreciate you having me. It's good to be with you on a Monday.
Hey, likewise, man. We need our fix on Mississippi State. Obviously, we play this season in Starkville, and listen, this game is one. I'm going to preface this a little bit before we actually get in this. Listen, this game is the one game, in my opinion, that Georgia has to watch out for. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But first, the show is brought to you by our friends over at Alumni Hall. Listen, Alumni Hall is 10 minutes away from campus. They've got licensed Nike gear, or Georgia gear for that matter, Nike, Cutter and Buck, you name it, right? Columbia, that's another one. Like, listen, excellent store for that matter. Juan's been there himself. You can get online, www.alumnihall.com, and get you some nice gear for the 2022 season. So check out our friends over at Alumni Hall. Juan, Jake, shall we start talking Mississippi State football?
Ben, I'm ready.
All right, so I'm just going to let you know we've already got some of the brigade in. Please stay safe, Juan. Can't stream and drive at the same time. He'll slip in the DMs and send the address. He's already got a little bit of a chuckle, Juan.
Yeah. I'm actually parked at God's restaurant, which is Cracker Barrel, so I'm good to go. Yeah.
You know what? Don't bring up Cracker Barrel. I'll start sweating. I love Cracker Barrel.
Yes, indeed.
Listen, if you don't understand what the brigade's mission is, it's to make Juan laugh again, folks. So before we start Mississippi State talk, listen, just understand, the goal is to make Juan laugh again. However, Juan told me that today he's not laughing. So good luck. Good luck.
I've matured, but I do want to say, obviously, we're going to be talking about Mississippi State. It brings back terrible memories for me in '96. That's actually where I got knocked out when we played there. But I can tell you that Starkville is probably one of the nicest places that I've played. The rowdiest places. The cowbells are amazing. The fans are amazing. They come out there and they support their group. So, it's going to be exciting to see what Mississippi State is actually going to do this year.
I always wonder about the cowbell. Every time I think SNL, I always think Mississippi State at the same time.
More cowbell.
Yeah. Now, Jake, we're going to let you start off here, my man. I think for me, my main question is, what has the vibe been for Mississippi State this offseason?
I think the vibe has been pretty positive. Mike Leach going into year 3. Everybody, if you follow Mike Leach and know kind of his track record from Texas Tech to Washington State, this air raid implementation typically takes a year to 2 years at Washington State. That thing kind of hummed on, year 4, year 5 before it really got going. And at Texas Tech and at Washington State, he was at two, types of programs that were bottom feeder type recruiters in those conferences, the Big 12 and the Pac-12. At Mississippi State, Mississippi State's a mid-tier recruiter. They have been so, for the last 15, 20 years under Dan Mullen and Joe Moorhead. Since Mullen got there, when Mullen got there back in 2009, he really kind of upped that profile. So same thing, though, at Mississippi State, had to really rebuild that whole program. There was only about 5 different pass catchers when he got to campus back in 2020 or spring of 2020. And so he's had to rebuild the roster, so to speak. So it's probably the best roster, like you and I were speaking about before we went on the air here, that Mike Leach has ever had. But coincidentally, the problem is he plays in the SEC. So I think what most fans want to see this year is a little more consistency. The consistency of this football program was not where it needed to be last year. And that's kind of, been the rub against Mike Leach is, hey, he'll pick one up where he shouldn't, go down to Texas A&M and win a game and then go on the road to Memphis and then lose a game, or have a kick and snafu against Arkansas on the road last year where you hit a field goal, had a couple opportunities to do that, you win that game. So then you go on the road to Auburn, come back, from down around 21, 24 points and win that game, and then drop a game to Texas Tech and the Liberty Bowl. So I think fans just want to see a more consistent product. This is a team that's going to live around 6, 7, 8 wins. They could possibly get to 9 if everything went right. But for me, consistency out of Mike Leach's squad in year 3 is it's kind of the mantra this year.
I was sitting there. Obviously, we were talking a little bit here, and I think it's one of the weirdest times to be an SEC fan right now, if you're looking at it that way, because I would say everybody is somewhat content with their head coach, right? Like either you have a new head coach, you're content with him. If you're Georgia, you just won a national title, right? Auburn is kind of forced into being happy, and that's their own fault and their own doing. But they're kind of content because they're forced to be. It's just one of these weird times, to look at an SEC program. But when you're talking Mike Leach, right? Like Mike Leach is so unpredictable, and I think that's what makes him a national treasure, right? When you sit there, you listen to interview these post game interviews, probably going to be some of the best ones you'll ever hear. Candy corn, candy corn, pirate, right? Like all this stuff. But when he puts X's and O's down, right? In my opinion, I think with the talent that he has around him, that air raid offense is ridiculous. And if you're not familiar, Georgia fans, 2020 was the first year that he had it, that he was at Mississippi State, and he gave us a run for our money. And I don't care, you're Georgia 2020. Um, with that being said, I think you look at year three with Will Rogers. Now, at the same time, I don't necessarily know, Jake, what talent he has around him. Right? Can you give us some names that you think could have some? I guess you could say have it be an impactful player, impact players on the offense. Now that Will Rogers is in season three.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is Mike again. Mike's most talented team, regardless of where he's been. Rogers comes back; he's not going to be scared to go into any stadium or have any team come in. So he's seen just about everything you can see. You're talking about a guy who was just under 5,000 yards last year. Really good touchdown to interception ratio. He protects the ball well. High completion percentage. He's got now two really good running backs in Jacavius Marks and Ladidrick Griffin, who are guys that can really, really get up and down, or excuse me, Dylan Johnson. These are two guys that can move and understand how this offense works. You're talking about two guys that catch the ball out of the backfield. The big thing for them and for this offensive front is they need to be able to run the ball in more down and distance situations when running the ball calls upon. Your second down and 8 when Mike, decides to run the ball. Will is pretty good at checking Mississippi State into some pretty good plays. They've got a good group of receivers this year, led by Griffin. Also, Austin Williams is a fifth-year senior. Caleb Ducking is a guy that saw a lot of time last year. Jaden Wally is a guy right here from the state of Mississippi that really had a big freshman year. He was hampered by some injuries last year. He needs to come on strong this year. When healthy, he is as good as anybody in the conference. And then you got some young guys. Guy Antonio Harmon is a guy that can wiggle. The big thing about this thing for Mississippi State, this receiving group is for the first time and maybe since when Dak Prescott was here, Mississippi State went to number one back in 2014, 2015, around that time, is there's different body types and different sizes of guys that are playing wide receiver. So, you got some guys that are tall, one transfer in from Georgia, another transfer in from Northwestern, tall and guys that can get down the field. You've also got some guys that can line up in the slot and move around and wiggle across the field. So a lot of different body types, a lot of different types of receivers for Mississippi State. And again, a lot of options for Will Rogers this year.
I'm looking at it this way, and this brings up a good question here. One of our guys, Kobe, asked about Justin Robinson, right? You talked about Justin transferring in from Georgia. How's Justin Robinson looking on the depth chart at Mississippi State?
I do not know exactly where that position is. I know that there's been high praise for him and, the gentleman that the young man that's in from Northwestern. Look, Mike's going to rotate, 8, 9, 10 guys, maybe even upwards of 11 guys. Gardner Mitchell's a guy that I know well. He's from right here in the state of Mississippi, played for Mike out of Washington State. And he told me, when he was out there, they would like to, they were at their best when they could rotate around 11, 12 guys and really just keep them coming, keep them fresh. Where they're at on the depth chart, I do not know, but we do know this. You don't bring transfer guys in to sit. You bring them into play, and I would expect that he, along with others, they're going to get multiple opportunities to catch footballs in this offense.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And we also have a little bit, I think we've touched on it slightly, but we'll read this question just to see if there's anything else that could be said about this. Rudes asks, what is the next step the offense needs to take to progress in the air raid system? Is it the run game, blocking, the receiver play, offensive line, or is it the quarterback?
I think it's going to be the run game in certain down and distance situations. You look at Mike Leach when he's been at his best. He had running back rooms as a collective that went just over 1,000 yards and put up around 20 to 25 touchdowns. Obviously, that's in different down and distance situations, red zone situations. So I think that's the biggest thing is for Mississippi State to throw a defense, get those guys out of the box, throwing the football, and then be able to run the football more effectively on critical down and distance situations. If they can do that, and they got, again, very capable backs to do that this year, I think this offense, you'll see it really, really pick up. And it hummed last year at times, but then it was stagnant at other times. And of course, then, the offensive line is going to be a question mark. You lost Charles Cross to the NFL. He was a top 10 pick. So you got to replace Cross there. So you got to protect well, run block well into the run game. And I think it's literally as simple as that for this offense. If that run game gets up and going when it's called upon, then this offense will be even better than we've seen the first year or two from Mike Leach.
So Absolutely. You have Sawyer Robertson as well as a backup. Will Leach do? I saw that they were combined, and they did pretty well, I guess, in their little scrimmage. Will it be a situation too where Mike Leach will be like the old Steve Spurrier and have a quick leash in the event that Will Rogers may be struggling?
That's a great question. And of course, Sawyer Robertson's definitely a capable backup, a lot of talent from the state of Texas, a guy that can move around a little better than Rogers can. I go back to the one situation we saw here that dealt with two quarterbacks was Mike's first year with KJ Costello when he came in from Stanford, and then Will Rogers. It took about 3 or 4 games for Mike to give the hook to Costello. So, I think Rogers will have ample time to, make this team his own. But it will be interesting to see. I think, you could very well see Sawyer Robertson come in some certain down and distance situations, the old cliche of, a certain package. But I don't know how much that would be. If Will Rogers is, playing at a consistent level like he was last year, then, Robertson is always there to be called upon if needed.
I think another thing, Jake, that I want to bring up, and, you talk about, right, like with the offense and things like that, but y'all's defense, from a recruiting standpoint, right? I think from a recruiting standpoint, kind of transitions slightly over here. Y'all had I felt like what's a good class for Mississippi State, right? Over the 2022 cycle, you're looking at what I think just outside the top 30, I believe. But then listen, it's headlined, by like D lineman, right? Travion Williams, or I think it's Travion, right? Does that sound
Correct.
right? And Jacarius Clayton, right? Guys from Mississippi, right? Has Mike Leach made it an effort to try to retain, those kids from Mississippi? I know obviously like Branson Robinson was a recruit that we picked up out of Mississippi, but outside of that, it looked like you had several guys that were in the state. I don't really have a fingerprint on right Mississippi high school football, but I would assume that it's not the worst right football, but keeping the talent in state. I feel like he did a good job last year. Have you seen that transition for him in his third year trying to keep these guys in state, or could you see coming from around the area, right, like surrounding states? What's that recruiting philosophy in your opinion? How's he recruiting wise?
Well, I think obviously, you would like to keep the high school talent here. I do a lot with the state of Mississippi high school football for the MHSA, and I can tell you the talent is as good as it is anywhere. We just don't have the number of dudes that a lot of places. Of course, you guys know Nakobe Dean well. So Nakobe Dean was from right here in the state of Mississippi. Georgia comes in here and handpicks him out of here. So the problem for Mississippi State and Ole Miss to some degree, and even Southern Miss, is there's some really good talent here in the state of Mississippi. But you've also got, guys like Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, LSU that come in here that cherry pick guys like Dean and some others out of here. So it gets tough to really kind of keep everybody under one roof. But having said that, yes, you look at a guy like Jet Johnson. He is from the state of Mississippi. He'll sit in that middle linebacker spot, and there's some other guys as well from here. But recruiting philosophy, and you can talk to 10 different coaches, it's going to go 10 different ways. With the advent of the transfer portal now, and the fact that, hey, you're looking to fill slots, you're looking to find guys that can play. Sure, you want to hit home base first, which would be your state, But then, you're going to look elsewhere. For instance, Mississippi State defensively, and some of these guys will play. They picked up 4 guys in the transfer portal in the secondary this year in this cycle because Mississippi State was fairly atrocious at times on long, giving up big yardage and long pass plays, led the SEC in 40 yards or more completed, through the air last year in the SEC, and that's not a stat line that you want to be number one at. So, long answer to a short question is yes. Mike is definitely hitting the state of Mississippi, but again, it's more of a state of Mississippi / regional / transfer portal type of tactic now, which a lot of schools are having to take.
Yeah, like you mentioned, right? Georgia is very familiar with N'Kobe Dean, right? And I think you're going to see that, right? I don't want to sound bad or knock anything, but if Mississippi State's on the on a tier like like a Florida, like a anything like that, if you're up another level or two, I think there becomes a true possibility that you see the elite kids stick around. But what I feel like it was going on, and I might be wrong here, with Mike Leach just obviously being third year, like he's evaluating, definitely sold to make sure was, the run was, stopped us, but we were able to pass the ball, right? Tried to beat us, or had to beat Mississippi State through the air. Do we see a defensive change so far, like into this season, right? Is it still, you know, I feel like he game plans and is willing to give up, right, 1,000 yards for the sake of winning a game, right? Is that philosophy change defensively, or do you see it become more of a balanced type defensive game calling?
So, I mean, Mississippi State's got a really good defensive staff. They're a team, when they get off the bus, they're not going to look like Georgia. They're not going to look like Alabama or Texas A&M, but it's a pretty salty bunch. They're going to get after you. I mean, they're a team that swarms to the ball. They've made it tough on a lot of teams over the last 2 years. And surprisingly, Mike Leach's defenses in most games, not all games, have played desirable football, and they have kept Mississippi State in most games. And I think that's what you want to see is Mississippi State's got a pretty good group of guys that they're going to be rotating across that defensive front. Semi-thin at linebacker. It's the secondary that they've really got to button things up. So, this team gave up, somewhere low 20s as far as points per game last year. And, if they can keep that thing in the low 20s, 22, 23 points, this offense is going to score enough points on most weeks to be in ball games and to win ball games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it. And Juan, do you have anything to say to that, or?
Yeah, and just like you said, that's going to be good that they're going to be rotating guys. They're a little bit thin at the D line spot too as well. But again, as long as those guys are getting rotated, and you got a lot of new guys on in your defensive backfield. However, the amount of reps that they get going against their air raid and on the offensive, every day, that's going to help you guys out. When it actually comes to that, the difficult part is you're playing in the West. When it actually comes to your defense, so you've got to face the LSUs, the Mississippis, the Alabamas. However, at least at the end of the season, you guys will say that you guys will be battle tested for sure.
Jake, that's a good transition point here. Thank you for that, Juan. We're talking about being in the West, so let's go ahead and kind of transition into the schedule preview, if we will. We'll pull up and we'll do a first six and then a last six, Jake. So if you're watching, you'll see this, but we'll break it out to you for those listening on podcast. So Mississippi State's schedule, they host Memphis before traveling to Arizona and play the Wildcats out there. And then they open up the SEC slate by going to Baton Rouge and playing at LSU, as Juan just mentioned, right? And then you host Bowling Green. Then you host A&M and host Arkansas. What initial takeaways for me, Jake? Heavy home schedule to start the season. Honestly, I think that'll do well, for Mississippi State. Listen, Mississippi State has an excellent home field advantage, regardless whether they're playing elite football or below average football. The Cowbells are ridiculous for anybody, right? They just are. So looking at these first 6 games for me, and then we'll let Juan go, and then I'll let you break this down even more, Jake. I've got, I would honestly say 3-3. Going into the back half of your of Mississippi State's schedule. I think you handled Memphis and Arizona for that matter, and I think you handled Bowling Green. So I think the non-conference slate, I think Mississippi State takes care of. I think maybe even a question mark is going to Baton Rouge in week 3. Can listen? 2 years ago, right when we played, we saw what happened with Will Rogers and the ability to beat defenses, right? You have to play a soft zone defense. LSU did not adjust to that, and they got cooked and lost. So, will Brian Kelly make those changes defensively? We'll see. Like I said, I've got Mississippi State going 3-3 through the first 6, but I think LSU could be an interesting game to watch out for if I'm Mississippi State. I just depending on how things go, Mississippi State could go in there and squeak something out. But realistically for me, I have 3-3. Juan, what would you say through the first 6 games? What would you thinking?
Well, the first one, I'm thinking Memphis. That's a revenge game. Jake talked about it a little bit earlier, how they kind of, slipped up on that. I think they win that. Arizona is just awful. I mean, they just really are really bad. So that's going to be a win. Where they're going to be able to get some guys in, get some, get some good play time there. LSU, that's a tough one. If that were a day game, I would give it to them. But you're playing at LSU at night. That's going to be one that's going to be tough. They beat Bowling Green, Texas A&M. The only real hope that Mississippi State has is they could be, looking ahead to that Bama game before that and not be as focused, so that they could, that could be a slip up there. Arkansas, it could go either way. I'm going to give Arkansas a nod just because of Jefferson. However, though, the way that Mississippi State plays, they may be able to outscore them. If they can outscore them, it's going to be a shootout. I'll give a shootout to Mike Leach all day, based off of Texas Tech and everywhere he's been. So if it becomes a shootout, I'll give it to Mississippi State. Outside of that, though, because of how well Jefferson is.
So Juan, before we let Jake speak, what would your record be for the first 6 games? Would you say 3-3?
First 6 on the low end 3-3. On the high end, I'd say 4-2.
That's fair. Jake, I'll let you take it over here, man. Give us a detailed breakdown on those first 6 games.
Yeah, well, just for clarity, I do all of my predictions. 129 teams, typically March and April, through our college football analytics that we do. And of course, I like to position things as what we call one possession games based on the data that we see. So, Mississippi State, Memphis, again, as you guys have said, that's a revenge game. That's a game Mississippi State has to have. But again, I look for the consistency factor for Mississippi State or the inconsistency factor. Just like last year, they opened up at Louisiana Tech and had to come back and win that game. So, I've got them penciled with a win against Memphis. I've got them penciled with a win against Arizona, but I want to watch that game real carefully because that is a Pac-12 game that's going to kick off at 10 p.m. And, this is one of those games that Mike Leach traditionally can slip up and lose. So you don't want to get into some sort of a, dogfight, no pun intended, out in Arizona. But I do have them winning that game, have them losing to LSU. I really like Brian Kelly's staff defensively. They're going to be pretty darn good. They've got a really good set of wide receivers. Quarterback play should be pretty good down there. And, LSU to me is the biggest anomaly in the Southeastern Conference because we just don't know. So many guys in from the transfer portal. But again, I like Brian Kelly and his staff. I have them losing that game, beating Bowling Green. Texas A&M is oddly a team that Mississippi State has played well more times than not since they've been in the conference. They went down there and got a win last year, but I have Jimbo Fisher's team winning that game in Starkville this year. And then the Arkansas game, at least for the last 6-7 years, that game has really pivoted on the team that has the home field advantage. And Mississippi State went up to Fayetteville last year, could not hit an extra point or a field goal to save their life, and they lost that game by less than a touchdown. I've got Mississippi State squeaking out a game against Arkansas just because it's in Starkville. So I have them starting 4-2 in the first 6.
I think that's fair though too, right? Like the home schedule. I think the home schedule there, right? The heavy home schedule in those first 6 games can really help Mississippi State out, and I think that's going to help build momentum into the back half, which we're about to discuss right now. So after Arkansas, you go to Kentucky, so you go to Lexington and you play the Wildcats there, and then you go to Alabama. So you go to Tuscaloosa after Kentucky, which that's 2 physical games right there. Then then I think it looks like a bye week, and then you host Auburn, I should say, right? Then you host Auburn, and then you host Georgia. Then you have another home game after Georgia, East Tennessee State, which is listen, no slouch, and then the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving night at Ole Miss. I'm looking at this right here. This is brutal. This is brutal. This We have a heavy home slate for the first half. A little bit more. You have you overall you have what 7 games? Yeah, 7 home games. So you have overall a nice home slate, but that back half, the scheduling is rough, right? The deciding factor here, and it's going to be interesting to see how these things play out. I just think it will. You look at, I think you could go to Kentucky and beat Kentucky. I think it's possible. That's like a Mike Leach game that you can just go out on a whim and win. You look at Bama. Listen, I'm sorry, but that's a loss. Sorry, they ain't even going to talk much about it. You host Auburn. I think that's a win for Mississippi State. Then you look at Georgia. Like I said, to preface this earlier, I prefaced it earlier. Georgia has to be on the lookout for this game. It's going to be a dogfight, and pun completely intended here. And especially with us being on the road, Georgia has to watch out for this. I think Georgia wins, though. Okay, I think Georgia wins this game. I'm going to say that they do, but this is the game, not Tennessee, not South Carolina. I think you have to look at Mississippi State. Don't sleep on Mississippi State. End of story there. You go East Tennessee State. You bring East Tennessee State in. Listen, East Tennessee State is a good football team. I think you beat East Tennessee State. And then the Egg Bowl. Ole Miss, I'm not necessarily having questions. I'm just curious. I'm waiting to see what Jackson Dart looks like. They have Zach Evans, which is going to be nasty. Okay, in my opinion, he is going to be nasty. They got Jackson Dart and Trigg at the tight end. But can Ole Miss's defense do anything to stop Mississippi State? I think this comes down. It's a close game, but I'm going to give this one to Ole Miss due to the home field advantage here. So ultimately, I think you look at going 3-3 in the back half, finishing at 6-6, leading Mississippi State to a bowl game. And it's right where Jake said, it's right in that 6 to 8 range, right? I think that's completely realistic, right? And as Mike Leach builds his team and things like that, I think that's fair. Juan, I'll let you go on with these games and get your predictions for the back half.
Okay, so I got them beating Kentucky at Kentucky. Kentucky kind of slipped, showed up and took some teams by surprise last year. I do not think that they're going to surprise teams this year, and I think that Mike Leach is going to be prepared for them. When we go to at Alabama, like you said, that's a loss. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Anything can happen, but that's a loss. Auburn, they should win. They should beat Auburn. Auburn is a train wreck right now. They're still struggling on trying to get their quarterback situation in line. Their receivers are bad. Defense is not going to be great. So I see them winning that. Georgia could be a trap game. I think that they'll be up for it because between Alabama and Georgia, you're looking at 2 teams that are in the top 2 or 3. So I think that they're going to rise up to the occasion, but they will not beat Georgia. They beat East Tennessee State, and the Egg Bowl can go either way. It's a rivalry. It's a big time rivalry. Kiffin versus Mike Leach, and I'm going to give the nod to Leach. I mean, I just think that offensively, anytime you're going to get into a track meet, I'm going to pick Leach every time.
So it seems like Mr. Juan over here
I've got a
has.
Glacier all in all.
Ooh, so we have two realms over here, Jake. You've got the 6 win side. You've got the 8 win side. What say you about this back half?
Yeah, on the back half, again, all things considering, if Mississippi State plays consistent football after the Arkansas game, at Kentucky, this is Mississippi State's one crossover game they've played since 1992, each and every year. So know Kentucky very well. And again, this is one of those games that it's going to be a one possession ball game. I give Kentucky the nod just because it's on the road just by a little bit. I could see a situation where, Will Levis outplays Will Rogers in that ball game, and it's just a tough environment to go play in up there in Lexington. So I have them losing that game. I have them losing to Alabama. And again, like you said, the back half is extremely brutal through this stretch of mid to late October into the 1st of November. Beating Auburn, as you said, at home, this is a game that they've got to go get. This is an Auburn team that lacks an identity. We'll know a whole lot more about Auburn by this point of the juncture in the season, but I have them beating Auburn, losing to Georgia. Again, you're talking about a team in Georgia that's lived in the top 2 and 3 in offensive and defensive score efficiency. We know all about how good Georgia is. Defensively, they're gonna have the dudes that can run step for step with Mississippi State, put a lot of pressure on Will Rogers. So I have them losing that ball game, beating East Tennessee State, and then I have them, with a one possession win at Ole Miss, simply because Mike Leach is 0-2 in the Egg Bowl so far against Lane Kiffin. He desperately needs a win. And I give the Bulldogs an advantage just because, at least at this juncture where we're at before kickoff, more about Mississippi State, and there's a lot about Ole Miss we don't know. We know they got a lot of guys in. We know that, like you said, Zach Evans is going to be a really terrific back if he can stay healthy and keep his head on straight. But I just think Mississippi State is a little bit better, a little bit more put together at this point, and we just don't know a whole lot about Ole Miss. So I've got Mississippi State going 7-5 this year.
We literally have 6 to 8 range, ideally, right? Ideally 6 to 8 range. It's just perfect. You couldn't. It's like we read it up, but we didn't. So I wanted Jake. I don't know if you've seen this. This is something that I just read very recently, actually, like a few minutes ago. I'm hearing word out of Baton Rouge that Miles Brennan is stepping away from football. Apparently, that he was informed by the staff that he will not be the starting quarterback, and he is stepping away from football. So that makes things a little bit more interesting in LSU, and really it makes me think that you're going to see Jaden Daniels be the LSU quarterback. Not saying that he will be. In my opinion, I think that that's what's going to happen, right? Like you mentioned this earlier, Jake. You don't bring in transfers to not play them. So, in my opinion, I think he's earned that probably, and that's what I'm seeing, or at least in my head, right? I think that's what's going to happen. But yeah, I think that's going to be interesting because if I'm not mistaken, Jake, didn't a year or two ago they had a quarterback issue and we're literally down to rough. Like it was a rough situation. I know South Carolina's experienced it, but I think LSU did too.
Yeah, they did, and I have not seen the reports on Miles Brennan, but if that is accurate, then I'm not really that surprised by it. I mean, Miles Brennan is a guy played his high school football here in the state of Mississippi. He threw for a gazillion yards down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast at a high school called St. Stanislaus, and played for a couple state championships that we had a chance to cover. A really good kid, a good family, good quarterback, but just never really was able to put it together. Battled some injury issues at LSU, some inconsistency issues. It just never really worked out for him. So, if that is true and he is on his way, then obviously best wishes and to him, he'll end up in something good. But again, you've got Jaden Daniels there. You've got a couple young guys, Garrett Nussmeyer and some others, some young talent on that roster. So you would have to think, I mean, Brian Kelly, yeah, you lose one, and we know this. I mean, as these quarterback battles start to unfold, guys are either going to, just in modern day college football, they're either going to slip out of the program or slip into the transfer portal. Guys just don't want to sit and wait their turn. They just don't want to do that much anymore. But yeah, that's unfortunate for Brennan if that is true.
Yeah, I mean, the dude waited a long time, right? He's been there I mean, I don't think he never transferred or nothing. So, you basically get put behind guys and just keep doing that. So, like you said, it is kind of unfortunate, right? But listen, college football is a business, right? It's just one of the unfortunate things that you have to, take into play, right, with the scope of the game. So, like I said, like I'm agreeing with your wishes here, wishing them well. Um, we'll just have to see what LSU is looking like. So what we'll do to recap here, right? We've talked about the state of the program, right? Kind of good vibes here in Starkville. Listen, we even all the way down to the schedule prediction, anywhere from 6 to 8, right? It can go anywhere, right? It can go anywhere. If there's Give us 3 names outside of Will Rogers. I think Georgia fans probably know about Will Rogers. Jake, give us 3 names that Georgia should watch out for when we go to Starkville.
Let's see. Outside of Will Rogers, we'll stay on the offensive side of the ball. Just go Jaquavius Marks, who plays running back. He should be, a really, really solid piece for Mississippi State this year. Also, Jaden Wiley, wide receiver. Look for him to hopefully, if he's healthy, he will lead that team from the wide receiver position. And then, you look at a guy like Jet Johnson at linebacker for Mississippi State. He's a guy that's going to kind of be the heart and soul of that defense. So I'm going Johnson, Marks, and Wiley for Mississippi State.
It looks like it might be one of my ends. Can you repeat just the last names of those 3? I know, just for the sake of the show, it looked
Sure.
like there was a technical glitch. So
Yeah, Jet Johnson, middle linebacker.
okay, so those are 3 names that And listen, Jake, one of the things I like doing about this, I like to hear these names because there's times when you don't really tap into the other team, and then it comes out as a surprise when someone torches you, right? So hearing these names for me, I like to keep an out for it. I'm like, well, we had an idea what was coming on, right? Um, but with that being said, right, you've got Mississippi State going 7 wins, bowl game. All of us really have them going to a bowl game. Um, and listen, I think if Mississippi State gets to a bowl game, I think I'd say there's some more content, right, with the fan base, right. I don't know, right, with the current state of the West, how much further you can go. Obviously, the goal is to get higher, but if you can get 6 to 8, and depending on where they realistically, where they land at the end of the season, I think that's still a fair spot ultimately, right, to wrap this thing up. If like I said, if you're Georgia, do not sleep on Mississippi State. I'm going to say that again. They about got us in 2020, and you damn well could almost see it happen. It could happen this year, right? Um, Also, DJ says can't forget about Hingle McCringleberry, the tight end. Uh, so it's just a little joke there. But Jake, I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show. Giving us some insight into the Bulldogs there. Um, Tell us a little bit more about Jake and where they can find you.
Yeah, you can always find me on Twitter at Jake Wim. That's just Jake Wim. Pretty simple, pretty easy. You can stream any of our products over here in Jackson or across the state of Mississippi at thezone1059.com. And of course, you can just really, those are the 2 spots to grab us. Stream us on that platform. We're 365, 24/7. All that deal. A lot of SEC flavor across our station. A lot of college football, a lot of NFL, and then everything else on Twitter.
There you go, folks. Go give my man a follow. Listen, if you need to understand anything about Bulldogs, he's your. So, suggest you go follow him on Twitter, and then listen in what he's got. Right, just go listen, take a listen. It's worth it, I promise. Um, Jake, again, hey man, thanks for coming on the show. It was a pleasure talking, and looking forward to it again.
Hey man, I appreciate you guys. Y'all have a great day.
Absolutely, sir.
All right, thanks.
All right. With that being said, folks, there is Juan laughing again. All right. Juan laughing again. I'm lost on what just happened.
Oh man, it was Rude's. I gotta look at that comment. He was talking about that shirt, and he said he could see me looking off into the future. I can't. Yeah.
It's it's a 1980s themed shirt apparently. And if you're
Oh
listen,
man.
if you don't understand what we're talking about and where this preface is come from, the DGD podcast just dropped their own merch, folks.
Oh
You
boy, that
have
was
we have merch now. So if you want your shirts, whether it be the DGD podcast, Juan 316, it's a thing, folks. Juan 316 is a thing. Juan 316 said, I just dropped 16 tutties on you. Okay? That's what happens. That's what happens. But nonetheless, if you want to look at merch, what's out there, check out our website www.dgdpodcast.com and click the merch tab. It'll send you right to our store. We've got a bunch of different things out there. And listen, we're trying to come out with new stuff to make sure people are interested in getting it. Listen, there's some good stuff already out there. Right? I'm talking t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, polos, pullovers, a flag if you really want to fly the DGD podcast flag. You name it, tumblers, all types of stuff. Just putting stuff out there for the folks. Might have to do what Rouge just said. The one might have to get one looking out in the future. It's something we might have to try to figure out how to do.
that is hilarious. Oh man, that was great.
Yeah, and because Rouge made him laugh, because Rouge made one laugh. Again, there's also a doing the Lord's work T-shirt, only available in white. Only available in white. It's so fitting that I had to bring that up because it just happened. It just happened. Listen, and the 63 to 3, we might have to look into one putting out a Gator garbage T-shirt.
Oh, for
My,
sure, absolutely for sure.
there's several ideas, guys, that we're putting out, right? But do us a favor and go check it out. Go check out the merch and see what's out there. Okay, I think you'll like it. And listen, we're always going to be dropping new stuff if we can, right? Whenever we got ideas, we're going to put it out there for y'all, right? Listen, do the Lord's work. Show us, right? Show us that you're doing the Lord's work. Right? It's that simple. Even you can even make one laugh again T-shirt, folks. It's that simple. Just go to dgdpodcast.com, click on the merch tab, and go check it out. Juan, good show today, my man. Listen, got a lot of insight on Mississippi State. Ultimately, like I said, I'm not sleeping on Mississippi State. Any final words, Juan, for you? What do you have?
You know, I would say in times past, it would be something that we'd have to worry about. You know, these games, you know, slipping up on us, or you know, us dropping a game like this. But I think that the way that that Kirby has kind of changed the culture, and it's basically you're either a lead or you're not. You know, these are the teams that we just take care of. We take care of every team on our schedule, and I just see us doing that, and not having those slip up or those trap games.
Well, and listen, we're going to talk more about that Friday, right? I think one, it's good that we talk about this Friday because it's our bye week per se, right? It's our bye show, if you will. Not talking about any specific opponent. So what we're going to do is give our predictions for the Dogs. We're going to talk a little bit about the offensive side of the ball and more. Don't want to give too much away, but that's what we're planning on doing Friday, right? With that being said, this is, I don't know how to explain this. Everybody wants to talk about Tennessee, Juan, and this will be my final takeaway from this. Everybody wants to talk about Tennessee, but honestly, I'm not as worried about Tennessee. I'm just not. Just not. Um,
Yeah.
and also,
You know, the first half, you know, but then after that, you know, again, just like we did, we adjusted. You know, after they had their first two drives where they just kind of hit us in the mouth, and then you know Georgia just did Georgia things, and that's what I'm expecting.
absolutely. Apparently, Juan, you've been called out. You've been called out. You have to show your face. No hiding Friday. Listen, we're going to blame this on technology, folks.
No, it wasn't. It was my iPad was on the dash, and it was
Ah,
about to overheat, so I
ooh.
had to turn my camera off and move it. So
So it was technology.
I'll be in a more secure place. Um, and I may have to take some Valium or something like that for Friday, just so I don't I don't bust out laughing.
Also, folks, for those listening, keep in mind for the season, we are changing our show times. Monday will stay the same. The main change is video, and instead of Friday, we will be moving to Wednesday at same time, noon, but doing video on Mondays and Wednesdays at noon. And the podcast will be available on Tuesdays and Wednesday night. So keep that in mind. It is not Saturday morning as it is now. It will be Wednesday night. So just wanted to remind folks of that. Good. The brigade came in hot. The
Oh my
brigade came in
gosh.
hot. Oh my good. Juan, apparently no
Rude
one
is
will ever
killing
hurt
me.
you.
Rude.
Never
Oh my
let anyone
gosh.
hurt one. We can't. We talk about Leach being a national treasure. What about Juan Daniels? All right, come on. Come on. Stop
Oh
stop
my
playing with
gosh.
me. Stop playing with me. That I want to count. I want to say that's like three. That's three different times. Not even mad. Not mad. It's three different times I want to say. With that being said, remember, Brigade came in hot and heavy. They made Juan laugh again. Just what they did. Also, Juan, have a great day, my man, and we'll look forward to talking Friday as we talk about Georgia again, folks. Georgia will be the topic Friday. Just letting y'all know. With that being said, have a great day and go dogs.
Go Dogs.